are recording and we are live on YouTube. Thank you.
All right. Well, my name is Darius Shanfar. I'm the chair of the Finance Committee for the City of Albany Industrial Development Agency. I'm going to call this meeting to order. We have all of our members, both of the Finance Committee and of the board as a whole here today. Our first order of business is our minutes, having been previously distributed. I would call for a motion to dispense with the reading and approve the minutes as presented in the agenda.
So moved.
Tracy, second.
I'll second.
Lee, any changes, observations, corrections? Lee, any punctuation mistakes?
No, but I think I got a shot taken at me in the last minute, so I'm going to leave him alone.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, so on to our official agenda. There's no report of the Chief Financial Officer for this meeting. We'll move directly into unfinished business. The lofts at Pine Hills, 237 Western Ave. I'm going to throw it over to Andy in a moment to just provide a little bit of a description. And this is a project that actually excites me a bit because it's great urban infill development. And even though the margins seem to be a little thin for the developer, Andy can give us a bit of a rundown on it.
Certainly. For the record, we just had a public hearing held in regards to this project, and this project has been previously discussed at past Finance Committee meetings of the IDA. Project description: the project proposes to construct a 124,000 square foot, 5-story mixed-use residential commercial retail structure containing approximately 97 market rate apartment units and approximately 6,000 square feet of commercial retail space on the ground floor. The 1.62 acre project site currently has 11 vacant structures on it that will be demolished as part of this development. The revenue gained to taxing jurisdictions: the status quo taxes over the course of the requested 20-year assistance period are approximately 1.55 million. The projected pilot payments are approximately 4.5 million for a net benefit of approximately 3 million. Property value increase: the current assessed value of the parcels of property comprising the project site currently sits at 1.179 million. The anticipated future value, estimated assessed future value, is 10.12 million for a net increase of just under $9 million. This is an estimated investment of $27.35 million. We will, as soon as we finish the run through of the project summary, we will go into full detail on the community benefits shortly. As with all projects seeking real property tax exemption assistance through the IDA, we requested the Capital District Regional Planning Commission run a employment impact analysis via the IMPLAN platform. They did just that, analyzing the direct, indirect, and induced effect of the temporary construction impact. That number pans out to be 33.6 million. In the permanent operations impact of the project going forward, 2.25 million. The employment impact of the project is projecting to create 5 permanent positions and 150 construction jobs. The requested assistance is a deviation from the project evaluation and assistance framework. As such, a pre-approved third-party consultant was brought on board to also analyze the developer financial assumptions and the request for assistance. They have done just that. An executive summary was made part of the meeting materials posted to our website, and the full report was distributed to the board prior to the meeting. The results of that third-party analysis are that the request at hand is reasonable. And I will flip it back to Darius with any questions.
Can I jump in quickly, Darius, just to mention, and again, since we do have a couple of applications in front of us, The committee, as Andy mentioned, was provided the third-party analysis of the financial analysis of the project. The committee had also been provided previously staff financial analysis of the project, which is included as well. If we want to dig into any of the terms of the finances for the project, would typically do that in executive session to discuss the financial history of an individual or organization. But the board does have all of that depth and happy to discuss it if you'd like. However, Andy did a great summary overall.
Yeah, I don't have any further questions myself.
Okay, I can run through our community commitment scoring.
Sure, that'd be
Okay.
great. Thank you.
Great. We will go point by point of our project evaluation and assistance framework analysis. Under the target geography category, the project achieves 1 point each for being in both a distressed and a high vacancy census tract. The project receives 1 point for being in a neighborhood plan area, that being the Midtown Colleges and University Studies Plan. Under the identified priority, the project is an identified catalyst site, as it was an identified development opportunity per the previously mentioned Midtown Colleges and University Study Plan. Project also receives 1 point for being a community catalyst, as it is in support of multiple initiatives within the Albany 2030 plan. Identified growth area, project receives 1 point for being located in an existing cluster, that being education. Job creation, project receives 1 point for creating 5 full-time equivalent positions. Construction jobs, project receives 2 cumulative points for the creation of 150 construction jobs. And under the community commitment category, the project applicant has elected to commit to 3 of these. The first of which is regional labor. 90% of the construction jobs will be filled by regional residents. EEO workforce utilization, 15% of the construction workforce are minorities or women. And MWBE, 20% of the value of construction contracts will be performed by MWBE entities.
All right. Does anybody have any questions? Any other topics for the discussion on this project? Again, my feeling on this one is to see this kind of urban infill development is exactly, I think, what our city needs. The only comment we did receive from the public on any of the 3 projects we have today actually was related to this one from the owner of the Last Vestige record store, which I think certainly some of us, not many of us, have been to at one point over the last several years. But he commented on what he felt was a decline of the area, and this was a needed project in that area. And hopefully this will also lead to the refurbishing of the other largely 2-family units in the surrounding 3, 4, 5, 6 block area. So, just my thoughts. I don't know if anybody else has anything else they want to add.
I couldn't agree more. Actually, Darius, it's a really solid project. The mixed use piece as well, for that neighborhood, and hopefully it will lift the rest of it up as well.
Yeah. All right. Well, then I would call for a motion.
Oh, I think you had Bob Schofield trying to jump in.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, thanks, Darius. Sarah, thank you for seeing me. Everyone knows I'm not a member of the committee, but I will tell you that Last Vestige sentiment, public comment really struck a chord with me, because that neighborhood immediately around there really shouldn't be in the situation it is. And we can only hope that investments like this that really will, turn things around there. I, frequent the area for, guilty pleasures like Dirty Dan's, and it's a shame to see what's happening on the street right now. So we really do need to turn it around, and this is a great way to do it.
Terrific. All right, then I would call for a motion for positive recommendation to the full board on this project for its approval.
So move.
Lee,
I think,
Second.
I was going to say Tony was trying to jump in.
So I'll
okay,
second.
Tony second. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. On to next. 1415 Washington Property LLC, 1415 Washington Ave. For the record, it's on page 53 of the materials, if you were jumping to it the way that I'm trying to. I'm trying a new thing here, trying to help people along. But this is what's commonly referred to as student housing. It's a tear down of a current hotel, and replacement with apartments that would be geared more towards student living for SUNY across the street. So Andy, you want to go through the project?
Absolutely. As stated for the previous project, same for this project at hand, a public hearing was just held prior to this meeting. This project has also been discussed at previous Finance Committee meeting minutes. Again, I will run through the staff summary of the project. And if there are no questions or comments, we'll then run through in detail the framework analysis scoring. The project proposes to construct approximately a 415,000 square foot, 5-story residential student housing dormitory complex containing approximately 240 residential units and totaling 560 beds. The 2.85 acre project site, which currently has a 95-room hotel sitting on it, that hotel will be demolished. And the project will also include just over 200 off-street parking spaces. Examining the revenue gain to the taxing jurisdictions, the status quo taxes over the 15-year period of requested assistance is $6.28 million. The projected pilot payments are approximately $10.568 million for a net benefit of just under $4.3 million to the taxing jurisdictions. Property value increase, current value of the property is at $7 million. The anticipated future improved assessed value, $17.5 million for an increase of $10.5 million. This is an estimated investment of just under $80 million total. Again, we'll go through the community commitments in detail shortly. Capital District Regional Planning Commission was also asked to conduct an in-plan analysis of the employment impact of this project, taking into account the direct, indirect, and induced effects. The temporary construction impact equates to $85.8 million. The permanent operations impact, $716,000 a year. The project is projected to create 8 permanent jobs. We have noted in our staff summary and for the record that there are currently 11 jobs on site which are expected to expire. The project also projects to create 300 construction jobs. If there are no questions or comments for staff, and also noting for the record that the project applicant is with us today to answer any questions, we can move into the framework analysis.
I would note here that again, the committee has been provided staff's analysis of the financials for the project because the project applicant is not requesting a deviation from the pilot schedules in our project evaluation and assistance framework. There was not a third-party review done for this specific project, but you do have staff's full analysis in your packets as well as confidential material. And if you'd like to get into those, we would need to move into executive session to discuss the financial background of an organization.
I have no need for a motion for me to do that, but if anybody else would like to, I'm certainly be happy to entertain it or entertain any other discussions or questions at this point before we go into the matrix framework. All right. Andy, want to take us through the
Thanks.
matrix?
Fantastic. Under the target geography category, project receives 1 point for being in a distressed census tract 3. Identified growth area, the project receives 1 point for being in an existing cluster, which is education. The project receives 4 cumulative points for an estimated total of 300 construction jobs. And under financial commitment receives 3 cumulative points for being a projected $80 million investment. Under the community commitment category, the project applicant is committed to 4 community commitments. Those being MWBE, 20% of the value of construction contracts will be performed by MWBE entities. EEO workforce utilization, 15% of the construction workforce be minorities and/or women. City of Albany labor, 15% of the construction jobs will be filled by City of Albany residents. An apprenticeship program, 50% of the contractors or subcontractors will maintain a New York State certified apprenticeship program. And of note, that totals 13 points, which and allows them to move forward with the request for a community commitment per the scoring analysis, community commitment framework pilot.
Great. I do want to point out, I actually should have pointed this out with the earlier project, but that project is going to, we provided the figure of almost $3 million in additional revenue to the jurisdiction. That's an average of about $150,000 a year to schools, the library, the city, and the county. And this project will be adding an average of about $300,000 a year over the course of its pilot. Granted, I think just for understanding purposes, most of that will come later on in that timeline of 15 years. But it stays, this project will not cost taxpayers anything from tax abatement or tax or so-called giveaway of any tax dollars. This actually bring in much more revenue for all of our jurisdictions here, which is much needed. Does anybody have any further questions or topics for discussion on this project?
Chair, if I may, I just want to note that it's my understanding that the applicant is still going through the secret process with the city. And I know, the full board cannot take its final action until that is completed.
Okay. So I guess we could have a motion now for a positive recommendation for the approving resolutions to send to the full board, but we have to wait to actually act on it at the full board.
That has
Yep.
been our typical practice, is to wait
Yep.
until the planning agencies have completed their reviews and approved the project.
Great. So is there a motion for a positive recommendation for 1415 Washington Property LLC?
I'll make the motion pending the approvals.
Terrific. Lee? Second?
I'll second.
Tony? All right. Terrific. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right.
All right, passes unanimously. All right, on to next, 413 North Pearl, which is starts on page 97. And we are going to yet another project by Jeff Buell, who seems to be having a habit of urban redevelopment of historic buildings, which is a good thing for our city. So Andy, why don't you take this through it? This is a 485 B project, I believe, which is which the tax abatements for the property taxes actually go through the city assessor's office rather than through the IDA. So this is for tax abatements of sales and mortgage recording taxes. That's all. But it's certainly an interesting project and a worthwhile project, and one that is continues a lot of the redevelopment, reinvestment, and revitalization of the warehouse district. So, Andy, you want to go through it?
Sure, and that is correct. The request at hand involves sales and use tax and mortgage recording tax only. There is no request through this agency for real property tax abatements. That being said, a public hearing was just held previous to this Finance Committee meeting, and this project has also been discussed at previous IDA Finance Committee meetings. The project involves the historic redevelopment of approximately 90,000 square foot structure into 80 market rate residential rental apartment units and approximately 13,500 square feet of commercial space. The project will also include 54 off-street parking spaces. The site is currently occupied by CMP Industries. This is an estimated investment of $17.9 million. I'm going to run through the community commitments, but note for the record that this project was not evaluated through the project evaluation and assistance framework. It is not requesting real property tax abatements. Had it been under the revitalization category, the project is located in a high vacancy census tract. Under identified priority, the project involves the historic preservation of the property and supports multiple initiatives in the Albany 2030 plan. Under identified growth area, the proposed project involves the conversion of a property into a residential use. Job creation, the project is committing to creating 2 permanent and 75 construction jobs. And as just mentioned, the project is over $17 million investment. And I'll turn it over to the committee for questions and comments.
Thank you. Anybody have anything to add? Any discussion? Any questions?
So I didn't ask in the public hearing because that's more of a statement platform than a question platform. Were they able to maintain their 485? I know there was a question on whether the legislation was going to change the tax credit options for this project, if I remember correctly.
That is correct. There is pending legislation now that would alter the 485A program statewide. And the applicant stated at the last meeting that if that were to take effect, their project would no longer be financially feasible due to losing that potential tax abatement through the 485A program. It's my understanding that there has not been approval of that legislation yet at the state level, and so that is still pending. So currently the project is moving forward under the assumption that it will be eligible for the 485A and hoping for the tax exemptions on sales and use tax and mortgage recording tax through the IDA to complement that and make the project feasible.
Okay, good. Thank you. I'd only add that the 485A program, which is run through municipalities like the city of Albany, it's similar to the framework that the IDA uses for tax abatements for property taxes. It's just done a little bit differently, but the fundamental concept is basically the same. All right. Any other questions, comments? Then I would call for a motion for a positive recommendation for approval for this this project. I guess it's not really for the project, for the tax abatements for 413 North Pearl. Do I have a motion? Terrific. Tracy? Second? Anybody?
I'll second
Tony?
again.
All right. All right. Any other discussion?
If I may, I would like to note and ask Member Schofield, I believe in the past, I think you may have abstained from this project. I just want, I don't know if I'm remembering that correctly.
Bob, you're muted. He's
I'm
not on the
voting
committee.
today, Andy, anyway.
Right. Okay.
I think we
He's
can
just
note for
hanging
the
out.
record your disclosure previously of involvement, and however, it doesn't impact today's vote.
All right, then. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. So we'll see on the docket for next week. All right. So on to new business today. And we have Capitalize Albany Corporation Liberty Park Acquisition Assistance. So we have an update. I believe Sarah, Capitalize staff, and Susan are going to recuse themselves at this point.
Chair,
Yes, we do
Yep.
have a pretty extensive compliance update under other business, and at your discretion, if you'd like staff to move into other business first to conclude the Paris jobs reporting, and
That's
then
fine with me.
we can bust out and let you have the room.
All right. That's fine with me.
Okay. So we'll amend the
Update
agenda to go to other business. We won't provide an agency update today for efficiency's sake, but we do have, as I mentioned, a pretty robust annual review of our 2020 annual report. And so sort of just to frame the conversation here, we do report annually on the agency as well as each of the projects that are active through the agency to the public authority reporting information system maintained by the state. We've got a sample sheet that we'll put up screen shared now to sort of give you a little bit of reference for those of you who have not seen it previously. The sheet, as it starts to pop up on your screen, you can see that each of these project reporting sheets has a considerable amount of information. I will note that the audit committee will do a full review of, you can see that the report is 100 pages long at this point. We have a draft report that's been put together already. The audit committee will be reviewing that full report, but please do pay special attention to pages 3 through 6 of the audit committee's packet that has individual board member information in that. So please make sure that we haven't made any typos or represented your information incorrectly in that. This report through Paris is really expected to provide a snapshot in time of December 31st of the previous year. So what you'll be looking at is the annual reporting for the year 2020, whatever was true at 12/31 in 2020. And the project reports will be pages 18 through 98 of that Paris report. You can see on each of the project sheets, the left-hand columns are general project information that gives a sense of the overall project. It also provides an opportunity for us to provide notes about the project. What you can see on the screen is a sample draft report for TMG Albany. That's the affordable housing project, the senior housing project on Hudson Avenue. Here in Albany. You can see that they also have a bond project that is noted there in the notes. If you look at the right-hand side, those are really sort of the performance for the project. We have information in each form about the project tax exemptions and pilots paid. Staff does go and work with the treasurer to determine that payments were made. Pilot payments were made for each project, and I'm happy to report that Mark has confirmed that everyone has made their pilot payments for county, city, and school to date. So we have full compliance there for all of our projects. And then below the pilot information, it's really what we'll be reviewing today, the project employment information, project by project for all of our active projects here. The reason that we do this portion of it at the Finance Committee is the Finance Committee really does dive deep into the projects, both on the front end and on the back end. So basically what we're doing at this point is reviewing each of the projects, project reporting for any sort of potential action that the agency may take. Like I said, we've confirmed the pilot payments have been made for all projects. Staff now is working through getting all of the required forms, insurance forms, ST340s, any of those other state forms that are necessary annually. And Andy and Virginia are doing a great job tracking down the last stragglers for that. And we'll have all of that by the end of March when we're required to submit this. We'll also be working on past that date for any forms that are not due specifically March 31. So really onto the main event here. What we will be doing is going through the jobs reporting, and the board has a draft board-only document that gives you a little bit of a clearer snapshot of jobs reporting, so you can sort of see it all in one place. Again, it's a draft and a work in progress. This year, what you will note is that we have had severe impacts due to COVID-19 as expected throughout. So that's pretty much the headline here. However, overall, the majority of our projects have reported that they have maintained the committed amount of jobs that they had projected at approval for each of the projects. Tom's going to give you a little bit more of the overall stats, but we are going to spend a little bit more time and energy going through those that have underreported on their jobs, and Andy's going to walk you through those. I don't want the committee to lose sight, however, of the fact that by and large, our projects are meeting their job commitments. What Andy is going to walk you through, though, once Tom goes through the overview, are projects that are underreported on their jobs. And then we're going to highlight specifically the projects that are not meeting at least 80% of their committed job attainment. And that, again, is the threshold that the agency has established for any projects that have a recapture clause that were approved with a recapture clause in their documents, that the committee would review and the board would review those specifically and determine if there is any action needed for the project. But we will highlight all projects that are underreporting, all projects that don't meet the 80% threshold, and then specifically talk about the ones that have a recapture clause in place that are not meeting that 80% threshold. Once we get through this sheet, we'll talk through staff recommendations for actions on individual projects. I'm spoiling the outcome here. We do have just a couple of recommended actions there. And for those, we may suggest going into executive session to talk through potential litigation and get advice of counsel on those. So with that sort of overall framework in mind, I think we can probably pull the screen share off the screen, and I'll turn it over to Tom to give an overview of where we are today, which again may change slightly by the end of the month as we complete reporting, but where we are today overall on jobs reporting.
Thanks, Sarah. And I'll be brief. I mean, overall, we've received 97% reporting from the 68 project beneficiaries, with 2 project beneficiaries that we'll discuss later that did not submit. 19 of the 68 projects that are not under construction are reporting fewer jobs than estimated, with 16 out of the 68 reporting less than 80% of the projections, which again, we'll walk through. On the flip side, 13 of the 68 or 19% are reporting more jobs than estimated this year. Total is 1,977 jobs versus 2,116 jobs from the previous year. It goes without saying, obviously COVID-19 has had an impact this year, particularly on hospitality and retail, and you'll see the numbers reflect that. Although again, as Sarah mentioned, it's worth noting that the majority of beneficiaries were above that 80% threshold. And with that, I'm just going to turn it over to Andy to go line by line.
Thanks, Tom. If you are able to look at the staff spreadsheet that was circulated as part of the board-only materials, on the column all the way to the left, we kind of assign a number, starting with 1 at the top. So I will start by calling out that number as it's just a number associated with where the project is within our staff spreadsheet. So I draw your attention first to line 2, 1385 Washington Avenue. This is the student housing complex, the Auden. They reported 6 jobs, which is 1 less than the 7 jobs they had committed to creating. They've noted that this is due to staffing changes due to COVID-19, but they do expect to hire for this position and be fully staffed at some point in the second quarter of this year. And it goes without saying, please interrupt with questions or comments as we run through this. 4048 South Pearl Street, unfortunately reported 0 jobs of the 39 committed jobs. Taking a step back, this project has had some historic difficulties reaching the initial committed number per their application. They had anticipated a restaurant of a certain brand being able to tenant the space, which did not happen. And
which number is that, Mark?
I'm sorry, that is number 4, Lloyd.
Okay.
Due to COVID-19 this year, they lost their retail tenants, which is why they were reporting 0 for December of 2020. And they are looking to release once the COVID restrictions are fully lifted. Coming down to line 8, Park South Partners reported 9 jobs, which is 2 shy than the 11 jobs that were committed to. This is consistent with previous years due to the fact that landscaping design altered the post-closing results, which resulted in the need for fewer full-time employees. Jumping down 2 to line 10, 136 State Street. This is the property that housed the former Capitol Melts. They have reported 37 full-time jobs, which is 3 less than the 40 that were committed to. And these were due to COVID, as reported by the project beneficiary, and staff is currently working with them now to follow up and just get a little more insight and detail as to what comprised that shortage of jobs. Coming down to line 12, 144 State Street LLC. That is the Renaissance Hotel. And unfortunately, as expected, jobs were underreported. 35 jobs were reported, which is 127 less than the 162 that were committed to. Operations were severely impacted by COVID, and they will attempt to rehire as demand and operations normalize and as they can reopen their full-time without restrictions, their banquet facilities and their restaurant. Jumping down to 15, 40 Steuben. They've reported 0 jobs, which they had committed to 3. That's a direct result of the Steuben market vacating the first floor retail space. They are currently attempting to release this space right now. Going down 1 to line 16, 412 Broadway Realty. They reported 6.5 full-time equivalent employees, which is 1.5 less than the 8 committed to. This is due to the fact that one of the retail spaces remains vacant as they attempt to lease that space during COVID. Line 23, Albany Hotel Inc. That is the Hilton Hotel. They reported 116 jobs, 44 less than the 160 that were committed to. And similarly to the Renaissance Hotel and most all hotels, their operations were severely impacted by COVID. Coming down one line to 24, Albany Medical Science Research. This project reported 59 jobs, and taking a step back, this project has historically underreported. The initial reason for the IDA becoming involved with this property was to assist due to the financial stress that it was having, finding this space very difficult to lease. So the 59 jobs were 228 short of the 287 committed to. The project beneficiary has cited increased difficulty leasing the space due to COVID-19. Staff has also reached out to get more of an update and also potentially an update on plans going forward to tenant up the space as the COVID-19 restrictions and pandemic begin to ease. Columbia 50 New Scotland reported 166 jobs, 50 less than the 216 committed to. This is in line with past year's reporting. The project beneficiary's reasoning being that staff was located to other sites, and that was also coupled with the current economic conditions.
What number again is that, Mark?
I'm sorry, it is 29.
Thanks, Andy.
Coming down 2 to 31, Dialect LLC. As we may remember, this project was terminated by the agency in August of 2020. However, because they did receive agency benefits during a portion of 2020, they were required to report to us. They did just that. As expected, 0 jobs were reported due to the fact the first floor retail space remained empty. This project will no longer be reporting to nor receiving benefits from the IDA going forward. Line 34 is Fuller Road Management Corporation. Reported 102 full-time jobs, 148 less than the 250 committed jobs. However, their reporting is in line with past years. They have a known and have reported to us in the past a discrepancy between the number of employees that have access to the building and the number of employees that they believe are full-time employees based on site. Line 36, LV Apartments is the old Philip Livingston Middle School that was converted into housing. They've reported 2.8 full-time equivalent positions, which is just shy of the 3 that they had committed to. Line 38, MCK 27 Enterprises, that is 70 Morris Street, Park South. They reported half a full-time equivalent job, which is half less than the full-time job they had committed to. Coming down to line 41, Sheridan Hollow Enterprises. They reported 3 less jobs than the 16 that were committed to. And as the reasoning, the project beneficiary cited that 1 commercial space remained vacant as they attempt to lease. That commercial space was the former Hungry Hollow space. Coming down 1 line to 42, Sheridan Hollow Village, which was the residential portion of this project, the Sheridan Hollow redevelopment project. They reported 1 full-time equivalent position, which is 1 less than the 2 that were committed to. This is due to the fact, as of 12/31/2020, a maintenance position was vacant, and they are actively engaged in the hiring process now and expect to be fully staffed going forward. Coming down 1 line again to 43, 60 State Place. They reported 1 full-time job, which is 2 less than the 3 that were committed to. Their banquet and event space was impacted severely by the COVID pandemic. Coming down to lines 47 and 48, these are 2 projects that did not report and also do have active recapture provisions as per the documents. We will discuss these at length when this review concludes. What we start to get into here are projects that are still under construction. So we expect for the most part that they will not be reporting any or all of the committed full-time jobs. However, we are still going to highlight those that are under reporting. If there's a few that aren't under construction, I will note those as well. Harmony Mills South, that is the 90 State Street residential conversion project. Committed to 5 jobs, is reporting 3. They also reported that they did not get as far down the road with construction this year as they would have liked due to COVID. Staff is following up with the project beneficiary for more details.
That's number 53 on your chart.
That's 53, correct. (16) Sheridan Ave. That is the NIC. They were not under construction. They did underreport by 5 jobs. That's 7 full-time equivalent positions, which was 5 less than the 12 committed to. That is due to the fact the commercial tenant had just opened and was negatively impacted by COVID. That is the yard. That is the retail space.
And that is number,
That is number 59. Going down 1 to 60, Bakura Inc. That project is the 4 Points Sheridan on Southern Boulevard. While they were under construction for a portion of 2020, by the end of the year, they had concluded construction and were reporting 9 full-time jobs, which was 16 jobs less than the committed 25. And obviously, as a hotel, they were severely impacted by the COVID pandemic, with the ability to operate as planned. 420 Broadway. This project was not under construction. They did report 0 jobs, which was 2 less than the committed jobs. There is a recapture provision with this project. As a refresher, the 2 jobs were previously associated with the 2 projected full-time jobs were previously associated with the retail space on the first floor that housed Colson's. That space is not yet open. Staff did reach out to the project beneficiary, who let us know that they expect to have that space opened in 2021 and do have a tenant in mind currently.
and that is number,
That is number 61. And we're going to come all the way down to the last line, 68, 351 Diamond Development. That is the major development on Southern Boulevard, where the 4 Points at Sheridan is actually located as well. They reported 35 full-time jobs, which was 115 less than the 150 jobs. Staff is in contact with the project beneficiary just to get some more insight. And they are still currently under construction as well.
Thank you. Are there, how to put this? Are there any issues with these projects coming in under projections for employment because of COVID? I mean, normally we would get dinged for it. However, that ding might come for projects coming in under projections. Is there any leeway being given on because of COVID, essentially, or anything that you're aware of?
Sure. So obviously this is a statewide and it's a
Right.
global problem at this point. So we do anticipate that this is going to be consistent with reports from other industrial development agencies statewide. So you'll see this across the Paris reporting system, particularly on projects, hospitality projects that involve retail, and certainly commercial office projects as well. It is up to the agency's discretion to review these annually, their attainment of the commitments made as part of their approvals, which is why we take the time to go through these sort of line by line for the underreporting aspects this year. We do have, with the recapture provision projects specifically, a defined process for reviewing the failure to attain job levels that we're committed to. And that process, again, is that we will review all projects, any projects with a recapture provision in their documents that do not meet at least 80% of the jobs committed. the committee and board would be required to review to determine the prudent course of action. And there are a number of actions that the committee and then board could take on those projects that have recapture provisions that are not meeting their threshold. They could choose to look at you all could choose to look at the extenuating circumstances, the information provided on their jobs reporting forms that we're sort of walking you through now, and determine that the failure to attain that job level is reasonable, and choose to take no action, but note that it's been reviewed. You could also terminate the pilot. You could also terminate and recapture benefits is sort of the most. The committee and board could also choose to modify the pilot going forward if it sees fit. Based on staff's review at this point, outside of the handful that Andy noted that staff is continuously now going back to for additional information. Some of those that may have said, look, it was COVID-19, but didn't give us a better sense of exactly what about the pandemic. You know, was it a commercial tenant that defaulted on their lease? Was it a retail tenant that closed their doors that we may not have seen? If there is information like that that we feel that we need to be able to present a recommendation, we are going back on a handful of those. But given outside of the ones that Andy noted, at this point, staff is recommending that the projects that have reported have justified their failure to meet the jobs numbers. And again, those would be consistent with reports from previous years that the committee and board had weighed in on and determined were sufficient rationale. And also, given the economic climate this year and the rationale provided on these specific job forms going forward. That is the exception to that. At this point would be the 960 Broadway project and the Nipper LLC project, which the board had drafted and sent a notice of termination in the fall of 2019. Staff had worked with the current project beneficiary over the previous year, attempting to get them to a report, which they failed to do this year, but also to determine a path forward for the project. They have been non-responsive recently, so staff is recommending that the board move forward with the termination of those project benefits. Going forward, those projects do have a recapture clause in place, and so would like to talk about potential litigation with the committee on those two projects in particular. And for those, if we're ready to move into that discussion, I'd suggest we take a motion on that, unless Joe, you have any additional insight there.
Those two projects are heavily in litigation already, correct? Outside of us.
Outside of us, correct.
Yeah. Joe?
The only thing I would add to what Sarah indicated, and I think you touched on it, Darius, was what the responsibility of the board is with respect to these projects. And I think what you're doing fulfills that responsibility. Staff has done analysis, staff has done due diligence, staff has done information gathering, has presented the material, organized the material, and then reviewed it with you. And if there's going to be any criticism from a legal standpoint or a regulatory standpoint, it's criticism if you don't go through this process. So the process that you go through each year annually with staff fulfills those responsibilities and gives you a basis for taking action on particular projects. So from a concern standpoint, legally, I would be concerned if you weren't doing any of this, but you are in fact doing all of this. So you're fulfilling your responsibilities and you're putting yourself in a position to make a rational decision with respect to particular projects.
I don't have any other particular questions at this point in time, but if somebody else wants to talk.
If I could, Joe, since you have kind of more interactions with other IDAs, as we go forward, I'm cognizant of the fact that this is all draft form, so we don't have the numbers. But once the numbers are given to Paris, should we see how we compare to other IDAs? Is there any rumblings of, maybe we have a higher job creation goal to begin with. Therefore, the jobs that were not created, maybe falls into a lower percentile. Is that something we could analyze after for?
Well, I think part of the issue there, Lee, and I think Sarah and Tom and Andy could speak more on this than me, is certainly you can do the analysis. You can compare what's going on in other parts of the state. But also part of the issue here is that each jurisdiction is different with respect to the types of projects that it's incentivizing.
Right. Okay.
So that impacts not only your numbers, but the return, if you will. I mean, if you had a significant number of hotels that you were promoting and incentivizing, which in fact is the case, I mean, you have a number of hotels, it's clear that you're going to have some issues this year and next year, and maybe the following year, given the impacts of the pandemic. That would be different potentially from some other types of industries that may not be as impacted by the pandemic, and that would obviously skew the numbers. But I don't think it hurts to look at what's going on in other parts of the state. But I do think Sarah is absolutely correct that on a whole, you would expect that there would be a significant number, significant issues with respect to job creation numbers for the next couple of years, given what the economy has suffered due to the pandemic.
And then it just reverts back to the apples and oranges argument. So I get it.
Yeah, we'll do two things for sure. One, we will definitely be talking with the New York State Economic Development Council to really understand what's happening with our partner agencies across the state. We'll also look out for that OSC report that comes out that compares IDA by IDA across the board. That, to Joe's point, and Lee, apples to oranges is right on a lot of these. If it's presented in a percent change difference, some of our projects, because they're multifamily residential, if you're losing one of two jobs, it's a 50% reduction in employment,
Right.
which doesn't strike the same chord as if it was a manufacturing facility that had 2,000 jobs in it. Right. So it's a little bit, we'll have to sort of parse out the numbers as those come out. And then to Joe's point on hotels, depending on where the hotel is located across the state, they may have different financial impacts. Our downtown hotels that really serve the state legislature, they serve large weddings, they serve the convention center for large meetings, they serve the Times Union Center for large gatherings of sports engagements. Those evaporated for 2020, and so their revenue hit was more significant than even other hard hit hospitality industry facilities across the state. So really it is going to depend on the context, and to Joe's point, that is why we sort of are doing this piece by piece. That's why staff is going back individually to each applicant to get a full picture of the specific needs and specific challenges of each of the active projects.
Chair, I'm not on the committee, but just a quick comment on that. I would hope that the state agencies that are reviewing CRC will take into the consideration the points that Sarah and Joe just made, because they do tend to look at these CRC reports and make these huge comparisons and generalizations. And the arguments that Sarah and Joe just made are really going to be especially poignant after the year that we've just been through.
Great. Well, thank you. All right. Well, unless there's anything else on the compliance update.
If you'd like to talk 960 and Nipper, we can do that today.
I have no need to at this point. I think we can do it at a future meeting unless there's something that we need to, that's urgent on the matter.
I'll just add that staff and I have reviewed those two matters, and we have embarked on a process that provides you with flexibility, so we can certainly talk at a later meeting with respect to options that are available to you.
Why don't we put on the agenda for the April 14th meeting?
Okay.
Yeah. All right.
Great.
Okay. Well, on to Capitalize Albany Corporation, the Liberty Park acquisition. We have a Liberty Park update. I think this will segue finally into Sarah, capitalized staff, and Susan to stepping off. And then I would ask for a motion to go into executive session on this matter to for us to get some have a legal discussion on the matter.
Great. We will recuse and leave, and we'll rejoin you for the CRC meeting.
Thank you.
Nailed it.
I'll make that motion. Yes.
Tracy, is there a second to go into executive session?
I'll second.
Lee, all those in favor? Aye.
And just to be clear, it's the reason for going into executive session is to get the advice of counsel on legal matters.
Correct. Thank you. So we're gonna give a moment so we can get into executive session. Let me know when I can.
I think I'm the only one still here. Should I remove myself or am I going in a wait?
You're gone.
Get out of here, kid. Are we all set?
Just
At
need to
this
get
time,
off.
give me a moment to open the breakout room for the executive
Thank
session,
you.
please.
Do I join?
Bye-bye.
Yes.
I'm supposed to join it? Okay.
And May, if you could just confirm that we're ready to go?
We are live on YouTube and we are back from executive session. Are you able to confirm that I can let in CAC staff in the waiting room?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. So we exited the executive session at about 1:54 after going into executive session about 1:33 in the afternoon to discuss the advice of legal counsel. We note that no action was taken during executive session. And I think unless there's any further question or discussion at this point in time, I'd call for a motion to adjourn the IDA meeting for today.
So moved.
Tracy, second.
I saw Lloyd in there.
Lloyd, okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right.
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned and then back to the CRC in a moment.